Welcome to the ChronCast, a division of the Chronicle and IMI. We hope you'll enjoy today's podcast episode, and if you do, please be sure to leave a like and share it around. Also, be sure to follow us in our social medias, which will be linked in the description box below. Hey everyone, welcome back to the ChronCast. I'm your host, Aditya Thiyag, and I'm joined here today by Sachetan Bhoopathi. Sach, how are you doing?
Alright at the moment.
Awesome. So Such actually runs his own movie Instagram. It's called Such a Film Boy. He does crazy reviews on there. Please go check it out. And today, I wanted to recruit his expertise so we could discuss a movie that I'm sure all of you have seen by now, Spider-Man No Way Home. So this is going to be a spoiler review. It feels sort of redundant to review it. It feels pointless to review a movie as popular as this, and a lot without spoiling it. So I do want to make this a spoiler review, but this is your one and only spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing? Go watch the movie. It's really good. But please come back once you've watched it. We also have a video. Me and Lydia Lisco did a video on our thoughts and expectations going into the movie. I will do a brief recap of that right now, but I do recommend watching that video prior to watching this one. But Such, I did want to start out by asking you, what were your expectations and thoughts going into this movie?
So, I haven't seen, so I guess I should say that I haven't been, exposed to Marvel since, 2019. So, 2019, post since then, I've started watching Marvel. And so, I've been fond of Spider-Man, I guess, because I've seen, Spider-Verse, and I've only seen the two Raimi films and all the which one was it? Homecoming and Far From Home. Before I saw No Way Home, of course, but I felt like my expectations were really mediocre.
Gotcha.
And I know that's such a huge contrast compared to the huge amount of hype that has been excessive across the industry. So
yeah, no, I definitely fell on the more hyped end of the spectrum, because I remember the first American or English movie I saw in a movie theater was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Or Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 actually. But that was my childhood growing up. I even watched all the amazing films in theaters. I've seen pretty much every single Spider-Man movie in the theater. I'm a huge fan. But I was quite worried going into this because, as Lydia and I talked about in the previous episode, which, if you haven't checked it out, it should be either linked in the description or I'll put a time card up right now. We were worried, both of us, because we feel like Spider-Man in the MCU it was a dream, but after they incorporated him and made him sort of an Iron Man sidekick, we were really worried. But in my opinion, I think No Way Home fixed a lot of those issues.
It certainly made them better. I'll say that for sure. I can't say it fixed it, but it certainly made it better. And I'm not sure, because I felt like the two, and contrast to everyone else I know, I felt like the home films were really mediocre. Because I haven't liked John Watts as a director so far. Gotcha. I don't know if it's because I haven't seen all his films, but I John Watts as a Spider-Man director felt really listless at times.
Gotcha.
And so going into No Way Home was sort of me just saying whether John Watts was going to able to hold up the expectations of, hey, let's have all these crazy ideas and put them into one film, hoping that the audience will be satisfied.
Gotcha. Yeah, I also am not familiar with John Watts' work. I personally feel I was a pretty big fan of, I thought Homecoming was pretty good, because I feel like it was a modern take on Spider-Man. Even if they were going this Iron Man Jr. route, I felt like he faced consequences. He still did things that felt very Spider-Man. That entire montage sequence where he's just helping out like an old lady with directions.
Absolutely. That incredibly worked as well. And I feel like definitely the issue was the Iron Man-centric films, but it's also the fact that the villains were never really well written.
Yeah.
And I know it's an MCU thing at this point, but the villains, especially John Watts, I feel like he casts good actors.
Michael Keaton is phenomenal.
Michael Keaton.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
If you've ever seen Michael Keaton, if you've ever seen Birdman. And Jake Gyllenhaal again.
Nightcrawler
and Prisoners especially.
Yeah.
but it always feels like, you know, Michael Keaton, Jake Gyllenhaal, like they're good performances. They're great performances actually in as the Vulture and the Juggernaut. Mysterio, yeah. I was gonna say Juggernaut. But I felt like they're really good performances. I just feel like they should have been well written more, because I feel like there should have been more nuanced.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And I feel like that was the benefit going into No Way Home. We already had these like previous attachments to these characters, and even the characters that weren't exactly like fleshed out, like Jamie Foxx's Electro. I feel like he puts on such a fun performance, and even though like he's not similar to his character in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you still had a previous relationship with the characters, right. And that really helped it going in. So I want to start by just walking through the plot of the movie. I saw this tweet. I forgot who tweeted it, but it perfectly summed up my thoughts on the movie. It was Spider-Man is like the tale of two halves. The first one is like a messy nostalgia fest, but the second half is like a quintessential Spider-Man story. And that's personally how I feel about it too. But to discuss the minutia, I feel like it would be best if we went like through the plot. Yeah. So starting out, the opening scene, it picks up exactly where Far From Home left off. Where J. Jonah Jameson, I'm so glad they brought back J.K. Simmons.
They got the man. I forgot his name as well. The J.K. Wilson.
J.K. Simmons.
Oh, J.K. Simmons. Sorry. I have to remember a lot of things.
Yeah.
But he's the guy from Whiplash, the amazing, talented actor that is J.K. Simmons. It's glad.
Yeah, I'm glad he's back. But he reveals to the world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And then immediately it goes into this like set piece where Peter's swinging around with MJ. There are news helicopters. There's Ned like FaceTiming him. And immediately what kind of struck me was how they turned. And this is my problem with the MCU in general. But I feel like they turned such a serious event and they kind of played it off for laughs right from the get-go.
Right.
Because, like, you have that scene transitions really well into Peter and MJ, like, going into Peter's apartment. And then it's, like, played off for laughs because Happy and Aunt May are breaking up.
And that was sort of my issue with... when I've, like, seen the trailers and all. It was because you think of Spider-Man, like, yes, he is fun, he is campy, but, like, that is such a serious issue. Like, having someone's identity being revealed out to the public. Like, no one wants that, whether you're a teenager or not. So... you really feel like I feel like what happened was that they had to cater it to such a way where they had to get everyone like into the film, but by doing so you forget the consequence of exactly what was supposed to happen.
Yeah, like you were supposed, like I completely agree with what you're saying about the MCU wanting to cater to the most amount of people possible, and I feel like comedy is the easiest way to achieve that, but I feel like they, at least at the beginning of the film, they really sacrificed the tone.
Yeah. The first 15 minutes especially, that whole portion of just, hey, there's so many people around us, we need to go to a new home, and then they're trying to figure out all sorts of things, the whole video chat thing.
The college thing.
Yeah.
I did like that there were actually consequences to Peter's actions this time, because that was something that I was sorely missing from the Homecoming.
Although I will say, though, that it was predictable.
That's true.
Because I don't know why, and this was a problem throughout the film that I will mention later on in the podcast as well. But I felt like as much as the music was really good, it really like revealed a lot of plot points before they were even said.
Gotcha. Yeah, for me, like even talking about the music, like in that first scene, the swinging scene, like in the trailers, you have this really epic version of Michael Giacchino's original score, but in the movie, it's like really lighthearted, and that sort of, even the music set a sort of, hey, this is a fun time kind of tone, and that's, I feel like an opening of a film is very important, because I feel like you should be able to set the tone, and I feel like No Way Home, one of his biggest flaws to me was just the tonal inconsistencies,
right.
But I will admit, as much as I was not a big fan of, like, how lighthearted the tone was, the second they showed that Kane and Charlie Cox as Daredevil,
yes.
I screamed I
haven't seen Daredevil yet, but that was such a huge response in theaters, for sure.
Yeah, little backstory, going off on a little tangent here. Daredevil is my favorite MCU character. It's my second favorite show of all time. So as soon as I saw him officially there, just the fanboy in me just leapt out. I was so happy then. I thought his incorporation, I liked that even though he didn't really have like a large presence in the film, and you could classify it as fan service, just that confirmation that he is a part of the world, and having him there to give the universe more legitimacy, almost like a comic book where characters peep in and out. I feel like even though the tone we have been complaining about for a bit, that was something that felt naturally incorporated.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like it definitely felt like, I feel like whenever there were new characters involved in No Way Home, what really changed was the fact that they actually took in the care to really give them the credit that they deserve, which was really refreshing because, you know, you've seen like Vulture and Mysterio that we've been talking about, but then now we have like the Green Goblin and Electro and
Octavius.
Yes. And so it really feels like this whole trilogy has been somewhat of a progression for John Watts in a way, and I feel like No Way Home was just sort of him saying, this is what I've learned over the years, and here's how I can show my growth, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we'll get to the villains in a second because like that is they do introduce it fairly early, but right after Peter gets these like letters from colleges saying he gets rejected, and Ned and MJ get rejected because of his controversy with Spider-Man. I'm glad that was given weight, and I love how Peter's first instinct is to go to an Avenger instead of call the Dean of Admissions, because that's what this universe's Peter Parker would do. Like,
right, yeah.
Even, like, it's been established in previous movies, like, he gave Mysterio the glasses. His gut reaction is to go to all of these people and beg for help. So, he goes to Strange. Strange is like, let me help you out, or I'll help you out, I'll make everyone forget. And one thing that I did find interesting, I don't know, did you watch the trailers leading up to this movie?
Yes.
So you know the scene in the trailer where like Wong is like, Strange, don't cast that spell.
Yes.
So if you watch the movie, like, you'll notice that Wong doesn't say that in this version. He's just like, just leave me out of it. So something that I learned, this is just a tidbit of trivia, they were actually like rewriting and reshooting the movie as they were filming it.
I see.
Which is why like you got that one shot in the trailer that was like Wong was like,
and especially like Captain White. Especially like Doctor Strange is sort of like winking at the screen, like it wasn't in the movie. I think.
Yeah. So a lot of those elements, it was reshot as the movie was filmed, and at certain points you can kind of tell, but this one, to me, I felt
like it was the most cohesive out of them all.
Yeah,
especially.
I appreciated the fact that Wong knew he couldn't stop Strange, and he was just like, just leave me out of it. That felt more in character than just like, Strange, don't cast that spell. So
especially leading up to Multiverse of Madness, of course.
Oh god, I really want to talk about that later. But speaking of just talking about No Way Home, Strange goes and he casts this spell, and one thing that I will complain about No Way Home, the magic makes no sense.
Oh yeah.
It does whatever the plot needs
it does whatever the plot needs to do. And I feel like that's the issue though, because the entire plot really revolves around the fact that Spider-Man is still a teenager and he still has yet to grow. And I feel like that's always been sort of the issue I've had with, I guess, the MCU Spider-Man, because I don't have a problem with him being a teenager, but I have a problem with the fact that he can't really make decisions on his own as well enough as the next person can.
Yeah, or he doesn't even, like, I feel like he might be a teenager, but, like, as a teenager, as a 17-year-old, right, this does not feel like a natural teenager. No. This feels more like a middle schooler.
Yeah, middle schooler, entirely. Like, almost freshman type of, like, middle schooler, teenager type thing. And I feel like had Doctor Strange and Spider-Man talked about the spell beforehand, rather than just going straight into the basement and just sort of casting the spell, like, I don't know how many times.
It was like 5 different times. It was like,
yeah.
Like, oh, everyone, no, Ned should know, Ned, and then this. I don't know why he was just like, everyone who knew I was Spider-Man before needs to know now. And done. That was it. Movie over.
Yes.
But you need a plot.
You need a plot.
You need a plot. And I don't know why Strange had to do the like little spin, like he spins the ring around. He could have just stopped and waited and been like, okay, tell me like the exact list of people you want me to know.
Because he's a calculative person. Like he's a professional doctor.
Yeah, literally, like this scene was so outrageous that I remember when the trailer came out, people were theorizing that it was Mephisto controlling Doctor Strange, who's a comic book villain, because it's so not only out of character, it's just it doesn't feel.
It feels like as if the MCU wrote Doctor Strange rather than Doctor Strange being Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it felt. Yeah, you're right. Like it felt like the movie needed to happen, so they wrote it in. But anyway, this happens.
And then we get to the bridge fight.
The bridge fight, because Peter finally talks to the person at admissions, and it's at the bridge. And Peter, in his Iron Spider suit, which I so very hate, but he's there.
I don't mind it at all. I just feel like it's very Iron Man centric. Like
that's part of the but he's there, and you hear like you see cars like flying up, and you see the. And
you see the tentacle
there. And as soon as I saw that, I cried twice watching this movie. Once was when Charlie Cox showed up, and the other one we'll get into, right? But, like, this scene got me a little emotional. It was so cool to see Alfred Molina on the big screen again. And just, it's not even a contrast from the empathetic character we see in Spider-Man
really
2.
And that's the refreshing part, is that they actually took what that character was and they just sort of put it on this film without any sort of changes at all.
Yeah.
Except, like, MCU humor and all, of course.
But even the MCU humor, I feel like, thankfully, it comes from the MCU characters. They weren't trying to get, like, Molina or Dafoe to just start quipping, like, randomly, which made me really happy because that was one of my biggest fears. Like, having Molina's just character be so arrogantly funny yet totally terrifying, like that is what I want. And to have like Peter try to fight him and just getting his Iron Spider suit ripped to shreds, that made me happy.
It does, and it definitely like serves as like the whole world is being on Spider. Like you really feel, and that's especially a part of why No Way Home really works, is that you really feel the whole world is on his shoulders.
Yeah, you feel the weight of the world. He's harboring the weight.
Or
of
at
the
least the USA, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's the world in the MCU.
Yeah.
But yeah, after the bridge fight, which just speaking about the fight itself, I do have a problem with the overuse of CGI in MCU movies.
And the visuals are again color grading and bland. So.
Yeah, the movie isn't always the most fun to look at. It does look kind of boring. But I feel like the things that how well Ock's movements are translated into the MCU, and then have him fight against an MCU Peter, that felt organic.
And I love the fact how they sort of had the Stark sort of like weaponry being displayed onto the tentacles.
Onto the tentacles, yeah.
Because it showed like, oh, holy crap, this is actually happening. That type of thing.
Yeah, that was the moment where I was like, wow, this is my nostalgic past and my current like colliding.
Right, yeah.
But after this bridge scene, Peter goes back to Strange's place, and they have cells where he's captured the lizard, and Molina's in there. And they crack a little joke where he's like,
"Don't call me sir."
Yeah, and I'm like, and even that was there earlier too. I can't deal with the MCU. I can't, cause like they bring in Ned and MJ, and they do the whole "let's Scooby Doo this" crap, and I'm I can't.
That was my major issue with the trailer as well. Was that if you want to have humor, like.
Make it organic.
And that's why, like, Taika Waititi and James Gunn do it, like, really well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy, they're in my favorite MCU movies. And, like, the thing with Spider-Man that made him funny, and even the Raimi films, Into the Spider-Verse, and even the Mark Webb films, like, those, like, Peter wasn't quipping nonstop, but he said a joke when it made sense. Like
Right.
Spider-Man throwing a bag of gold at Dr. Octopus in a bank and saying, "Here's your change." It's campy, but it makes sense.
Right.
Right. Doctor Strange in the middle of this high-stakes environment saying, "Let's Scooby do this crap," and then MJ going on like a 20-second tangent.
Like Scooby-Doo is involved in the MCU, guys.
Just, like, I don't know, but okay. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that one joke, but in general, humor's very hit or miss. But Ned and MJ are in the Sanctum Sanctorum.
And I always admired Ned and MJ beforehand as well, because they have not only on screen, but like even off screen, like their chemistry is like really damn good.
I really like the chemistry in general, like you were saying, but I don't think they're written the best. But we can get into that later. Just purely talking about this film, Ned and MJ are Peter's guys in the chair again, and Peter needs to go find more villains, and
he stumbles upon Electro. And
my biggest issue with this Electro scene, I just want to get it out of the way really quickly. I have two of them, right? And I know I'm being like really negative about the film like right now, but trust me, I do like this movie. It's just the first.
And I do like it as well. I just don't love it.
Yeah,
as many people do, I guess.
It's not even about the love. It's just this first half is very easy to nitpick because there are a lot of issues with it. But like Peter goes to find Electro, and the entire thing is computer generated to the point where it looks like a PS2 cutscene.
Yes,
and I can't deal with that.
Yeah, and no, I don't blame you as well. I feel like, and I don't know why, but Jamie Foxx's Electro. Jamie Foxx has always been one of those actors where, unless he's not Jamie Foxxing the role, I can handle him. You know what I mean? Like Django, for example.
Yeah.
So like it always feels like there's always like a slyness towards his like every sort of character that he always plays, and it's always a hit or a miss every single time. And I feel like Electro embodies that in a way.
Yeah, I think Electro in this movie isn't Max Dillon. It's just Jamie Foxx having fun, and honestly, I'm okay with it.
Right.
I'm okay with it. But outside of the visuals being a literal PS2 cutscene, right? I feel bad. I think the character done worst by this movie is Sandman. Sandman,
because he comes at the beginning to help Spider-Man, only for him to betray Spider-Man just so that he can join the villains.
Yeah, and I know you didn't watch Spider-Man 3, but I am going to recap it a little bit for you. Like, Marco's arc in that movie was, his entire character summed up in one line is like, I'm not a bad guy, I just had bad luck. Right? That's a line he says to his daughter. But at the end of 3, Peter forgives Marco, and Marco just sort of is like, thank you, and then he fades off. So that was a natural ending point for Sandman's character, and I don't know why they chose to bring him back after the events of Spider-Man 3 when they could have just brought him like from the one of the earlier scenes when he was still a villain, because that's what they did with everyone else.
Right, yeah.
Right? So I don't know why they did it then. But anyway, Peter gets Electro, Peter gets Sandman. He brings them back to the Sanctum Sanctorum. And I like a little detail that he stayed to fix the forest that they did damage in.
Yeah.
Just so he wouldn't... Because that is an organic, humorous thing that Spider-Man would do.
Yeah. And it's not just Spider-Man. It also makes sense to the plot because, technically speaking, when there is, like, you know, power outages out there and you are in the forest, you kind of have to fix it anyway.
Yeah, because for context, Electro, Peter, and Sandman are all fighting in this, like, electrical grid area in the middle of a forest, and it leads to a lot of damage being caused. So I just thought it was cool that Peter stayed behind to fix it.
Yeah.
After that, we get the actual MVP of this movie, which is Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin.
Yeah. And do I have to say anything?
Yeah,
I've been an admirer of Willem Dafoe. Like, I haven't even seen Spider-Man 2, admire Willem Dafoe. Like, I've seen him, like, if you've ever seen The Lighthouse. And
I watched it a couple days ago.
And especially, like, The Florida Project and, like, all sorts of films. Like, the guy's a genius.
He's a powerhouse, too. Oh, my God.
The fact that he doesn't have an Oscar is so, like, damaging.
Yeah. But he absolutely killed. Dude was born to play a supervillain. He kills it in this role. But in this movie, like you
He
can
he,
see.
he really he really like is the Green Goblin
Yeah.
in every sort of way.
But at the beginning, when we're introduced to them, it's still Norman. It's still him
Yeah.
being sympathetic. He destroys the Goblin mask, and May takes him in at her job, right?
And you can really tell that he's like really like he's in need of help. He's
Yeah.
in need of like, hey, I'm like really lost. There's all these voices. I need someone to help me. Like you really feel that.
And Willem just plays such a broken Norman so well.
Oh yeah.
And right after that, May is holding Norman, and Peter shows up, right? And May is like, Peter, we need to stay and help these people. And Peter, and it makes sense within the context of the MCU because this is how Peter's being. He's like, nah, I want to send them all home, and I want to make sure my friends get into college. And May finally gives Peter a heart-to-heart, which I've been sorely missing because so far May has just been used as like appeal, right? And she's been commented on for her appearance. But May being an actual maternal figure to Peter in this movie was
that really helped a lot because I feel like, and that was sort of my issue with Aunt May was because Aunt May was always a character where it's just like it's the one person Peter Parker would always go for because even if he doesn't have MJ or even if he doesn't have Ned, he always has Aunt May. And she was always there for him, even though especially like in the Raimi films and I assume the Mark Webb ones as well. Yeah. He always sort of like dismisses her just because he needs to handle Spider-Man, but she was always there.
She was always there for him. Yeah, and even in those two films, he was still interacting with May. Yeah. May was his moral compass, and I feel like in Homecoming, she got replaced with Tony Stark, and then in Far From Home, she got replaced not only with Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio, but also Happy. Like Happy gives him
not only even also Samuel Jackson in a way.
Oh, Nick Fury? Yeah. I just feel like Peter's had so many like parental figures that I feel like they neglected May. They did it at the cost of May. And I'm glad that this movie went back to basics and actually got May to teach him, like, hey, you can't dismiss these people as it's not your problem.
Right.
You brought them here and you have an obligation to at least fix them.
And it really suited May's character as well.
Because she's working at Feast, which is helping people in need. So they all go. At this point, it's all 5 villains. It's Norman. It's
Lizard.
Otto.
Lizard hasn't really done much in the film.
Lizard doesn't do anything in this movie. He's just kind of there. He sits in a truck for a little bit.
But and then there's the Sandman, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Electro.
So that's 5. So they're all here at this point. And for me, everything this point on is borderline perfect. I will go that far. I think the visuals are like okay, but because just the color grading. But I think everything else about this movie is absolutely perfect after this point. So this is when I will start complimenting the movie. So feel free to.
And this is when I started liking the film more. So So feel free to undo the dislike you might have dropped because like I do like it. So now they're all there. Norman goes, I'm something of a scientist myself. They had to embrace the meme. But Peter, all of the villains are sort of coming to this realization that, hey, if you send me back, I'm going to die. And Strange is like, Peter, that's just the way of life. Like, we brought them here. We have to send them back to die. And Peter finally grows and he's like, I'm sorry, this is what I need to do. We can't just send them there to die. And then there's the Doctor Strange fight.
I really liked it.
It is good. Again, very CGI based, of course. But I feel like it was always the good CGI because that was always the sort of like leaning point for Doctor Strange. The film, at least I haven't seen the film, but what appealed me from the teasers and trailers was always that sort of like mind-bending sort of aspect of it all. Yeah,
and when they go into the mirror dimension, I love how like Peter's spider sense finally kicks in. Like they do a really good job with that in this movie, but like the reason that like Peter is able to dodge Strange while he's in the astral form is because of his spider sense. Everything they do with it is really cool. I feel like both of them embrace what makes their characters unique. Like Peter uses his spider sense, but he also uses his like what makes him Peter Parker, not Spider-Man. Because at the very end of the fight, like Strange is almost ready to beat Peter, but Peter uses like geometry and
Yeah.
webs them all up because Peter's a nerd, right? He's a
Yes.
math nerd, and I'm glad that they embraced the Peter Parker side of what they embraced the man part
Right,
of what makes
yeah.
him Spider-Man, right? So he gets the magical object. The reason that they're fighting, I'm sorry,
There's a magical object that the spell is encased in, and they have to sort of. I think they sort of have to withhold it from Doctor Strange before they have to release it.
yeah. So basically, the spell, it's like a magical object. When you press a button on the object, it would send all the villains back because that's what was inside the spell.
Yes, that was a MacGuffin, the button.
The button, right? So Peter took it back and trapped Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension. He stole his little portal ring, gives it to Ned for safekeeping, right? And then he takes all of the villains and he goes to Happy Hogan's apartment where May and him were staying, because he wants to be able to cure them.
Right.
And I think this is just, it's so cool to see MCU interacting with the Amazing Spider-Man, interacting with Raimi. And even within Raimi, we never got an Osborn-Octavius interaction.
Never, actually. Well, it was always because, like, Osborn died before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we finally got, like, two characters from franchises in the same universe that get to interact with each other. And then, like, they are able to whip up a cure for Ock, and Ock goes for, like, from the arrogant Dr. Octopus villain that we saw in the original trilogy, like on maybe the train scene and stuff, and we went back to the empathetic Dr. Octavius
Right.
that we knew.
And that sort of, like, sold the deal that this is... Because I've always never really fully grown into the side of John Watts is a good director, but ever since I saw the scene, I figured this is a man who grown.
Yeah.
This is a director who said, hey, I did some mistakes in the past. This is what I can do, and I want to do that well.
Yeah,
I feel like that's why that scene really works.
Because it's so human. It's not, like, played off for jokes or anything. It
Yeah.
feels very real. But...
And you really do feel like, because even beforehand, I always felt like the whole conflict for making the villains empathetic again, it always felt sort of silly for me, but at that scene, I felt like, okay, this is where the heart really lies in the film.
Yeah. And after this, the villains really believe in the legitimacy of being able to be cured.
Or at least try to.
Try to. And they're working on this thing for Electro, and all of a sudden, it switches to, like, a POV shot on Peter, and the camera
just stays there,
and it's like a really close-up shot of his face, and it tracks him as he walks around, and there's like a sound cue, there's like a little sort of effect around his head,
his spidey sense is going on,
his spider sense is going off, and you're super tense because you're like, what's going on, right? Because all of the villains have been acting normal,
and you would think that it would be Electro.
Yeah, because Electro's been the sort of one. Electro in this scene is about to be cured.
Yeah.
Right? And like they're about to cure him, we think it's Electro. But then Peter goes and he shoots a web, and Norman's hand is webbed. And Dafoe plays it so well, but he goes from the meek scientist Osborn back to Goblin almost instantly.
Yeah.
And Octavius is like, Norman, and then like in the Goblin voice, Willem's like, Norman's on sabbatical, because like the Goblin's there, and you get this super tense and probably one of my favorite scenes, if not my favorite scene in the movie, where sort of everything goes crazy. Electro refuses to be cured. Goblin's like, these are not curses that we have been blessed with, they are gifts.
It's really just Willem Dafoe, like, really... the whole force of that scene was really Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
He's at front and center, and he does it so well in this film.
Absolutely. And then Sandman goes out the window, Electro shoots lightning at Dr. Octopus, and he goes flying out the window.
Yeah.
And then
and it's nice
Peter
to see
tells
how,
me to
like,
run.
Dr. Ock finally, like, it's nice to see Dr. Ock in Peter's side at that moment as well.
Because
fighting off of Norman. It's almost like this is a person who he's respected, because Norman was always a person he respected beforehand.
Yeah. And just to see, like, Peter tells May to run, and then like they're all fighting inside, and it just becomes a straight up no holds bar brawl between Peter and the Goblin. And oh my god, I love this scene because they finally like didn't do an entire CGI fight between two weightless characters. Like
Right.
no, like Peter, like the scene where Peter like kicks Norman through like the apartment floors. They did film that practically.
Yeah. And Willem Dafoe did do the stunts by himself.
That was one of his conditions of returning. He was like, filming the stunts is part of the experience. And at 66 years old, this man was like, if I don't get to do all of my own stunts, I'm not doing the movie. And the scene where sort of Peter jumps on top of Norman and just pummels him like over and over again, and then the Goblin just starts laughing. That's apparently they reshot like a couple scenes. I'm not sure which one, but I think this was one of them. They shot it a few times, and Tom Holland went on record. He was like, Willem Dafoe did like this scene like 20 different times, and every time he did it, it was a completely different take.
Yeah.
So
and I feel like he's the type of actor to give different takes as well.
Yeah.
Especially since you do want to experiment on, especially in a role like Green Goblin. He's incredibly unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main things in No Way Home that works, is that you have no idea exactly what he's capable of doing at which certain moment. You just know that when he shows up, it's going to be serious, and you're in for a real treat.
Yeah. And they're fighting. The action is brutal. It's It's close. It's practical, and it's just a delight to behold. They go down to the ground floor because Happy's apartment is really high up. They go to the ground floor. Norman, is standing, and May, while Norman has Peter pinned, they developed a cure for the Goblin personality, and May tried injecting him with it, and it turns out it failed. Norman sabotaged it, and Norman summons the glider, and it hits May, and he runs away.
Yeah.
Right?
And this is the scene, and this moment on is when I'm pretty sure I'm going to get most of the backlash.
Really? Okay.
Because, here's what I will say about, so spoiler alert, Aunt May dies.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't feel sad for the scene.
Okay.
Because what happened was, not only was there, like, music cut and all, but I felt like what happened was that, when you have a character that actually is a maternal figure for that film, for that only sole film, and you don't have any sort of, like, pre-notions beforehand, like, it really sort of just feels like a sudden, all-of-a-moment type thing. And
yeah, that is, I think, I wanted to judge. The first time I saw it, I didn't feel much, but the second time I saw it, I felt a lot more. Because I feel like judging this film on its own, they did a good job with it, but May's character should have been established as his maternal figure.
Yeah.
Way beforehand. Absolutely. But I think her death, the acting on display, Holland gave it his all.
Holland is great. I will say that. He is a good Spider-Man. He really is. I mean, he's great, honestly.
Yeah, and I feel like his acting went a little underappreciated because of the next scene that we're about to talk about, which is, so right after May dies and Peter's in shock, Peter's in grief, it cuts to Ned and MJ sitting at Ned's house, and they're like, oh my god, what happened to Peter? I wish I could find Peter Parker.
Yes, we need Peter Parker back. He's somewhere in distress. And he finally uses the Doctor Strange ring, which, by the way, because he uses it for, safekeeping.
Right. Because he takes it when Peter fights Strange in the mirror dimension, he steals his sling ring so he doesn't get out. But Ned has the ring, and he's like, wait, I just saw a spark when I said I wish I could find Peter Parker. And Ned goes, I wish I could find Peter Parker. He says it 3 times. He does the little portal thing. And way off in the distance, you see a Spider-Man.
And then he just comes into frame, into the ring, and then
it's Andrew Garfield.
Yes.
Which, this scene just made me so happy to see Andrew.
And I will say this, I haven't seen the Mark Webb ones, but I will say he seems the most enthusiastic out of all of them.
In my opinion, Andrew Garfield is by far the best actor to play Spider-Man. Like, I like Tobey and I like Holland, but Andrew is the best actor to play Spider-Man, even though he wasn't in the best franchise. But he absolutely killed it.
You can tell he wanted to be in this film.
Oh yeah, and you can tell he loves Spider-Man.
Yeah, for sure.
And just immediately after Andrew's appearance, Ned does it again, and this time it's Toby.
Yes. He doesn't really have the suit on as he comes into frame, but he always has a suit on.
Yeah. And I think my favorite part about that is people, like, their criticisms and their praises of the respective franchises that they're from. They were always like, Toby's a goofy, I don't really like him as Spider-Man, but he was a great Peter Parker. And other people were like, Andrew Garfield's too suave or cool as Peter Parker, but he was a perfect Spider-Man. Right. So to see them reprise their roles as Andrew enters in frame as Spider-Man and Peter shows up, or as Toby Peter shows Parker. Up as Peter.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense, especially since the Raimi films are more... I don't know if the Mark Webb films are more serious, but I know that the Raimi films definitely went into that serious territory far more, just showing exactly what the Peter Parker side was a lot. So it's really nice to see that he just sort of like left off into that sort of arena.
Yeah, and he was in general just...
Toby's great.
Toby's great, Andrew's great. They both just came back and they felt like Spider-Man.
Yeah. I don't think there's ever a bad actor for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they all... Whoever casts Spider-Man, they always feel like they know exactly how they're doing and what they're doing. So when they're on, like, screen, they're just so enthusiastic. They want to be in this film. They want to have a great time with all the characters. Like, it's truly... I do appreciate that about Spider-Man. I think that's why many people like Spider-Man so far, so...
Yeah, and immediately after we, the audience, are introduced to Peter, there's this really cathartic moment where Andrew and Toby meet Holland and
on the ceiling, on the rooftop.
On the rooftop of the high school. And it's just it's such a powerful scene because this is Holland at his lowest point, and he's like, You wouldn't understand. And there's this great line. It's not from this movie. It's just from Spider-Verse when... Spoiler alert for Spider-Verse, which is the best Spider-Man movie still.
Absolutely.
Just like when Uncle Aaron dies in Miles.
Yeah.
Miles is like, you wouldn't get it to the other Spider people. You wouldn't understand. And then Gwen, she's like, Miles, you're talking to the only people who would understand. And I feel like that was that moment for Holland because he got to meet the other people who probably would understand.
Right.
Because, what's his face? Garfield lost Gwen.
Gwen Stacy, and then Toby...
Lost Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben, yeah. I was going to say MJ, but I haven't seen the third film, that's why.
She doesn't.
She doesn't die?
She doesn't die. Right. He loses Uncle Ben, and you get that really amazing moment where Holland's like, before May died, she told me that with great power, and then Toby finishes the sentence, like, comes great responsibility. And everything from this point forward, what I loved about everything in the last act of the movie was just the humor was way more natural.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't the MCU.
Because like I had an issue, and that was like my issue when like the Spider-Mans were revealed because there was like the I think Ned grandmother scene that happened. I was a bit concerned there. I was like, what are you doing here? This is MCU humor in a Spider-Man film again. Like you're almost pivoting me off. And then afterwards, like the humor in that entire scene, especially in the Statue of Liberty scene where they're just on there, they're just talking. By far one of the best humorous moments in the film. And it's actually really fascinating because, you know, like, yes, Spider-Verse is by far the best film, but very rarely this is probably one of the very first times where we actually just have Spider people talking.
Yeah.
It's just a conversation. It has nothing to do with the plot, but it's just there.
And in any other movie, you would hear me complain about, like, oh, this drags the pacing down.
Yeah.
Oh, this is unnecessary.
Although I feel like the pacing earlier was a bit... It was a bit shorter than I expected. It could have been a bit longer, of course.
Gotcha. But I just feel like everything with Andrew, Toby, and Holland, this is, like, a little later in the film. But, like, just that moment where they're talking on the Statue of Liberty before the final battle, it's just... It's so funny where Holland's like, what's one of the craziest people you guys have ever fought? And Toby's like, I fought an alien made of black goo. And Holland's like, oh, I fought an alien on Earth in space. He was purple. Yeah. And Garfield's like, I want to fight an alien. He's like...
And I like how Holland kept that teenager-esque in a way. Especially since he was like bragging about like, you know what, I'm in the Avengers, everyone. Like you know what that is?
And that scene was funny, but that's later on. And then right before this scene, we're getting kind of disjointed now, but right before the scene on the Statue of Liberty, all three Peters get together in Holland's high school lab, and they all are just trying to figure out ways to cure the villains now. And Peter's like, this is where it gets confusing, but Toby's like, oh yeah, I can cure the Goblin, it's not that big of a deal. And Garfield's like, oh, I can cure the Lizard, it's not that big of a deal. And Holland's sort of like in awe, like, how do you guys just know? And but for them, right, they've been dealing with these monsters for years at this point. So obviously, like, they would have had a lot of time to process it. But anyway, they're all here, right? And they're all just messing around while still being organic humor. Like, Ned's like, here you guys go, here's some web fluid, because two of them use web shooters, right? And then Toby's like, what do you guys need that for? What is that?
And it just comes straight out of his body, just like that.
I'm glad they addressed that, because that's something that, like, a smaller, like, a less refined director would just ignore.
Right, exactly. And again, and I know I mentioned this before, like, this is the moment where John Watts really grew, especially in terms of direction, saying, like, hey, look, here's the things that happen in these Spider-Man films. Here's the thing that I did. I know I made some mistakes. Here's what I can do to solve those mistakes.
Right. So after this, we got the aforementioned Statue of Liberty scene, which I really appreciated. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about the final battle, but what were some of your favorite moments that took place?
I really liked how they handled some of the more tensest moments, I guess. Although I will say music has always been an issue in terms of, it can be predictable in moments.
I thought Michael Giacchino's score was fantastic.
It's good.
I really like him as a composer.
He's a really good composer. It's just, I feel like the music sort of revealed the moment more than the moment revealed itself.
Gotcha.
But apart from that, like, that scene alone, you can go to a theater and experience it for sure.
Yeah. My favorite scene in the final battle, at least so the final battle is sort of split in two, where it's just three of the villains. It's Electro, Sandman, and Lizard, and Ock shows up at the end. And then there's a second half where it's just the Goblin, right? And just purely talking about the first half for now, I love the scene. I know we mentioned it earlier. The three of them, like, aren't good at working as a team, so they regroup, right? And Holland's like, oh my god, we've never worked, like, you guys don't know how to, none of us know how to work.
It's the Spider-Man pointing meme again.
Yeah. And then Andrew and Toby are like, yeah, we've never worked in a team. And then Holland's like, okay, not to brag, but I was in the Avengers. And then Toby's like, that's great! Oh my gosh, what is that? And him just like, is that a band? Were you in a band? And it's hysterical.
It is hysterical.
That scene, that feels rewatchable. That scene was pretty funny. Yeah. But it's just like, of course they would have that curiosity. Of course they wouldn't know.
Of course they would have to ask, like, what the Avengers are. Like, let's be honest. If a superhero team name was Avengers and there was a band name named Avengers, I'll mostly say that the band name is Avengers.
Not even that. It's just like they don't have the Avengers on their Earths, right? Their universes. So it made sense for them to ask. I thought it was a cute little moment. And then
the Toby 1, Toby 2, Toby 3.
Yeah.
They jump off, they fight. It's excellent.
It's really cool to watch. But then after they finish fighting all of the minor villains,
Peter cured they cured Doc Ock beforehand. They cure the Lizard, they cure the Sandman
and Electro.
And then all that left is Green Goblin.
Goblin. And this moment is just like Willem Dafoe is the real star of this movie.
Okay, hands down, he's the best MCU villain. I'm sorry. Like, I know he's not in the MCU per se, but like, I think at least in terms of performance-wise, I think in my opinion, he is the best one that gives.
I won't go that far purely because it depends on what we classify Loki as. Because I know Loki became an anti-hero at one point.
I might consider him an anti-hero. That is true.
But if we're talking just outright villainy, Killmonger is probably my favorite. Okay. But we're getting a little off topic here. Purely talking about Green Goblin, Norman blows up this like part of the Statue of Liberty, and MJ and Ned at this point are just back on the rafters, right? And MJ falls. And so does Ned. But with Ned, like the levitation, the
rain.
Yeah, that cloak comes to save him. And then, but with MJ, we get this really cool moment where Holland dives after him. I'm sure you've seen it in the trailer.
It's the trailer. It's the final shot in the trailer. Everyone knows about it.
Norman stops him from getting MJ because he has the glider. Like, Norman grabs him with the glider. And there's this really tense moment, and then you just see Andrew dive after her.
Right.
And for him to catch MJ and then stand and be like, "Are you okay?" That led
and then he's just crying at that moment once he did
and
that.
no, like, she didn't get it, right, in that moment. But we, the audience, I know you haven't seen the Mark Webb films, but spoiler for that, like, Gwen dies the exact same way MJ would have, right? So for Andrew, this was a moment, like, I might not have been able to save Gwen, but I was able to save that for someone else.
Yeah.
And that was really heartwarming.
I think that really helps in terms of, like, character as well, because, like, it's that pure emotional catharsis of, like, saying I actually did something right for once that I haven't done right in the past.
Yeah, because the issue with Spider-Man is, like, he always feels like he can never catch a break, like he's never doing anything right, and for Andrew to do something so right, like, that's what drove him to tears.
Yeah.
And then Holland faces down with Green Goblin. They're just standing one-on-one because the other Spider-Men are elsewhere at the moment, right? And Holland's like, I don't want to cure you, I just want to kill you, right? And Holland just beats the crap out of Goblin, but then
Toby saves him, stops him from, like, beating him up too much.
But the way he does it is, like, Holland is ready to stab Norman with his own glider, and Peter's the one that jumps in front this time to catch the glider. And that was emotional for me because it's in Spider-Man 3, right? Harry jumps in front of his own glider because Harry becomes, like, the new Goblin. Harry jumps in front of his own glider to save Peter because another villain tries to stab him with it.
So this is a parallel. Then.
It's a parallel. But, like, there's 3 levels of parallels, right? Because Norman, in the first Spider-Man movie, killed himself with his own glider.
And he is sort of a father figure to Toby in a way.
Yeah, but I'm purely talking about that scene, right? Like, Norman stabbed himself out of selfishness. He tried to kill Peter, and he missed, and he ended up killing himself. But Harry got stabbed by his glider out of selflessness. He did it to save Peter. And now Peter's paying not the selfishness for it, but he's like, I want to help someone else. I'm going to carry on the legacy of my best friend. Right? So they end up curing Goblin, and everything seems to be okay. Doctor Strange comes back from the mirror dimension, but all of a sudden the sky starts splitting open, right? And
Doctor Strange madness.
Yeah, and then Strange is like, oh my god, all these villains are coming in, and I don't know if I can stop them. And Peter goes, what if everyone forgot who Peter Parker was?
Yeah.
Right? And Strange is like, no. And then Peter was like, Holland is like, but would it work? And Strange is like, yes, but no one will ever remember who you are. It's almost like you never existed. And Holland finally
says, you know what, that's for the betterment of it all.
Yeah. And he makes everyone forget who Peter Parker is, and you get this really sad moment with him and Ned and MJ, and he's like, I'm going to find you guys later. And he sends the other people back to their universes, gives Toby and Andrew a big hug. It's really cute. And
it's dramatic, it's long, it's powerful.
And then everyone forgets, and it cuts to a scene in winter where Toby's not Toby, I'm just going to call him Peter at this point because Toby and Andrew have left the film by this point. And Peter is walking back to a coffee shop where Ned and MJ originally met at the beginning of the film, where MJ works to find their, like, college acceptance letters.
And what I love about that scene, though, is that the visuals are different in that scene. Like, it's incredibly noticeable how it's almost Hawkeye lit in a way.
I haven't seen Hawkeye, but I think what you're going for is, like, that grounded take.
That grounded sort of, and
human take.
Right.
So immediately after that, like, Peter walks in, MJ's like, hey, can I help you? And then Peter's like, he has this whole speech planned out because he wants to tell MJ, like, oh, I know you forgot about me.
As Peter Parker would.
Yeah, but this is me. Like, we had a whole life together, like, before this. But he goes, I'm Peter Parker, and I want a coffee. He doesn't have he thinks, I don't know precisely what went on in his head, but he doesn't want to tell MJ in that moment. He gets the coffee, he visits Aunt May's grave, where he runs into Happy Hogan.
And Happy doesn't even remember him as well.
Because no one knows who Peter Parker is anymore. And at the ending of the film, Peter finds an apartment for himself, gets told the rent is paid on the first of the month. And they could have very easily snuck in, like, the rent joke in there from the original trilogy, but they were like, no, let's let this moment be poignant. And Peter is in this, like, dirty apartment, and he has a police scanner, he has a sewing machine, and you see him jump out of the window as the radio scanner shows, and we are introduced to, in my opinion, the best final swing in any Spider-Man movie.
Oh, yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And I know that's a bold claim.
It is a bold claim, but I do agree in a way. I haven't seen the other Spider-Man films, right? But, like, it is definitely something that feels climatic in a way. It feels finalistic in a way that just serves as the right moment for the right time.
Yeah, and, just Peter jumps out in a almost perfect recreation of, like, his comic book classic suit, but a little shinier. And he does a final swing over Rockefeller Center. The music is swelling. But this swing, to me, it was the finale of the movie. But what this represented was, so far in the MCU, this has been a 6-year arc for Peter Parker to finally become Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He's experienced real loss. He's experienced real consequences.
It's teenager towards man. And for the first time ever, this is him being a man.
He's really Spider-Man. Right? And so the movie ends. And I don't really feel like... I don't think the post-credit scene are as relevant. I know...
because...
I think
Daredevil was already introduced earlier, and then Doctor Strange, they just showed the teaser again.
and it was like a Venom teaser, and I think ending the movie here and ending our review here would be best, purely because, like, this is such a poignant moment to leave off on.
Yeah.
And I know I used that word before, but
I do want to say this though, because I feel like after I've seen the film, I think I've grown a more appreciation for Spider-Man as a whole. I mean, granted, I don't love the film. There are flaws I have with it as a whole, and I do think the hype was a bit over the top in some areas. But I will say, though, that for the most part, I did really like the film, and if you want, like, a superhero sort of blockbuster, incredibly poignant film, especially for those who have been fans of Spider-Man for, like, generations at this point, please do watch it.
Yeah, if you are a fan of Spider-Man, you'll love this movie. If you haven't been a fan of the John Watts movie so far, I'd still recommend going out to see it, because this is probably my favorite one.
This is definitely the best one.
I really like Homecoming, but this is probably better. I'd give this movie like a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
I'm leaning more towards 7.
I think I gave it more like a 7.5 out of 10.
I don't really do half point, but like 7 out of 10, pretty good score. Movie's a good time. I hope you enjoy.
2021's been an amazing year so far.
Yeah, it was. It was an amazing year, but I'm really excited for the movies this year. But just, I hope you guys had a good time hearing our breakdown overall. Like, do you have any closing thoughts?
Apart from that, I may not. I will say though, this might be the last MCU film I'll probably ever see in theaters. But I'm glad I at least liked the film.
Yeah.
But overall, just if you're a Marvel fan and you want to see a good Marvel film, this is definitely one of the better ones.
For sure.
Yeah, and I don't know what else I left off. Just to maybe wrap it up, I guess.
Yeah, this movie, we had a good time with it. We have its fair share of flaws, especially in the first half, but overall, is definitely worth watching. So that's all the time we have for you guys today. We know this was a little bit of a longer episode, but with such a hyped up movie, we really wanted to take the time to dive into what made this movie great and what might have hindered our enjoyment.
And I just want to thank you, Aditya, for inviting me over.
Yeah, of course, no problem. I had a good time. Thank you so much for being on the show. We had a great time having you.
Anytime, man, anytime.
All right, this is Aditya Thiyag on behalf of the ChronCast signing off. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the ChronCast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to be notified when our next episode goes live, please be sure to follow us on all of our social medias as well as hitting the subscribe button. In addition, if you want to check out our other podcast, The Interview by Alex Daracel, a link will be provided in the description box below. We hope you'll choose to join us again on the next episode.